Hey, it's me, James. Happy Monday to you. I am filming this week's Oracle Outlook video reading on Monday, June the 9th, 2025. And if this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome and thank you so much for taking time to check out this video and maybe perhaps explore other videos on my channel. And if you're a returning viewer and subscriber, I'd like to thank you for circling back and for supporting the work that goes into this channel. So I am so excited, you guys, for this week's video reading because I am working with my latest, that's the deck on the right, my latest deck creation. So I'm just going to get right into the introductions of the deck. So on the left, if you have been tuning in most recently over the last few video readings, I am working with a tarot deck of my own creation, and that is the Mitchell Tarot. This is my second deck, so I'm calling this the AI edition because it was a collaboration with AI. It was one of my first decks using AI, and I personally love the end result. And then the deck on the right, because we've been working with what we've been calling here in the channel, some of us been calling the double decker readings, and so that is just the end result of a request I got from one of my regular viewers. So Ismail, you're getting another shout out, my friend. He asked me a while back if I would consider working with two decks in an Oracle Outlook video reading, and so of course I try to honor all requests when they come in. So I was excited to do it because I don't normally do that in my personal practice, although that will be changing now when I show you the next deck. So that will be changing, but we've been playing with variations of the double decker reading. So the deck on the right, okay, you guys. So I decided after a while to make my own Lenormand deck, and I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. But I was recently asking myself, about the decks that I've made and what decks have I not made. And I realized after going through my inventory of decks, because I've made tarot decks, I've made a Kipper deck, I've made playing card decks, Oracle decks, but I've never made a Lenormand deck. And a Lenormand deck, or the Lenormand deck system, is important or integral in my practice. And so this is why. So I'm going to give you a little story here. Little background. So most of you know that I got into card reading as a result of having a dream, and it was no different with Lenormand. So one day I had this dream, and I was walking to go somewhere. I had to be somewhere in the dream, and I remember it was 6:30 p.m. and it was a time of the year where it's still light out at 6:30 p.m. And so I was stopped by two women in the dream who knew me from my work with tarot, because at that time I was mostly a tarot reader. That was my claim to fame, was tarot. And most people who knew me locally or knew me through professional means, meaning like I did professional consultations at this point in my tarot journey, knew me as a tarot reader. So they knew me as a tarot reader in the dream, and so we were talking about this, and so they walked me over to a table of cards that they had because they wanted me to look at the cards on the table. And they were saying that they wanted to show me this tarot deck. So I'm looking at the table and I see some tarot cards, and I go to them and I say, some of these cards are not tarot cards, they're Lenormand cards. And then I woke up. Now, in waking life, up to that point, I couldn't remember having seen a Lenormand card, having heard about a Lenormand card, but apparently that must have been the case. And it just stayed in my subconscious awareness because I couldn't remember when I consciously ever hearing about Lenormand. So it seemed like a new thing to me when I woke up. So I looked, did my research, went to Google, looked it up. Turns out there was a system that existed. So that set me on a path of getting my first Lenormand deck, and the rest is history. So I started posting Lenormand videos on my channel. It kind of blew up at the time. So this was around, I want to say, 2017 maybe. And yeah, so that became a thing, and so much so that I started doing in my professional practice, incorporating Lenormand readings as a service. And so a lot of people still to this day take me up for Lenormand readings. So I predominantly do tarot consults and Lenormand consults. So now that brings us to the present moment. So I thought, like, okay, I hadn't made a Lenormand deck. Let me go ahead and make one. So the deck is called the Mitchell Lenormand Oracle. And in the title card, there's an image of the book card right there. So there's that. And so the deck is, these are the backs. And I love it. I'm going to show you some of the cards in advance. I am so pleased with how this turned out. I'm so excited. And I posted on my community tab on my channel my very first read, so I won't go into that, but you can check out that post there. But I am so excited with the cards. So these are the standard. These are the standard 36 right there. And then I have extra cards because I'm a fan of extra people cards. I made extra man and woman cards. So this is an additional lady card. And then I have, because back in the day when I started with Lenormand, I was doing a lot of same-sex readings, so I have partner cards. So there are 2 partner cards right there. There's an alternative gentleman, another child card, 2 female partner cards. So I'm excited about those. And so those would be for different types of scenarios using those extra cards, like same-sex readings or partnerships involving people of the same gender, that kind of thing. Not necessarily just romantic. Okay, so now let's go ahead into the shuffling of the cards. Now that I've done that, I'm going to have to move a few things off the table. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and shuffle the tarot first. And so I'm going to do like I did last week. I'm going to work with a 3x5. So we're going to pull 3 cards from the tarot deck. And then 5 from the Lenormand. So just as I do every week when I get to the shuffling part of this video reading, I always ask the cards to give us the information, the insight, guidance, or advice that's going to be most helpful as we move through the upcoming week. So I'm doing that now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. I'm going to fan the cards out. And so, like I said, I'm going to be looking for 3 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. So these are the 3 tarot cards that we'll be using this week. Take the remainder of the deck up. And we'll just move those to the top for now. Now I'm going to do the same with the Lenormand. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Same thing. I'm going to cut the deck. Fanning the cards out. And now, like I said, I'm going to pick 5 from the fan. So those are the 5. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to line these up in the order that they were selected. Okay. All right. So just as I've been doing, and I'm calling this the 3x5, that's what I've been calling it the last few weeks when I worked with other deck systems in conjunction with my tarot deck. So I'm going to read the 3 tarot cards first, and then we are going to be looking at the line of 5 below from the Lenormand. And so, like I said in previous videos, if a major arcana card shows up, that would be like the overall maybe lesson or principle or theme. And then if it's a minor, it might be how we play a particular part of the week out. And then, of course, if you're familiar with the Lenormand is more grounded, which is why it's at the bottom of the 2-tier lines here. Okay, so first card from the tarot is the 7 of Water. Okay, I personally like this card, but of course, I like all the cards in my decks. But the 7 of Water, the reason why I like it is because one of its meanings for me is it's more of we are being encouraged to explore our spiritual side, our spiritual nature, and that's because of the number 7. The 7 is a spiritual number. And if you have maybe a more traditional pack, this is like the 7 of Cups in a more traditional pack. Okay, so for me, this card can be about our intuition, psychic ability, things like that. And now I mentioned dreams, and I just love how this is a nice follow-up to that for me. This card can be suggesting that one of the ways that you could honor your intuition or develop your psychic awareness is to pay attention to your dreams. So this might be a week if you are intuitive minded, spiritual minded, psychically minded, that this is the week to pay attention to your dreams or just basically your inner guidance. Now, aside from that, when this card comes up, it could represent being faced with choices or decisions. And usually if that's the case, you're being asked to narrow your focus. If you have a more traditional pack, then you will know that this card, traditionally speaking, has the image of a person who's faced looking at 7 cups, and each cup has a different choice emanating from it, and the person is actually faced with making a decision, right? If that's the case, this card is saying make the decision from a more emotional outlook or standpoint, right? So there is that. And it's basically like, what do you feel you need at this point in your life? And seeing how life is reflecting different options to you based on that emotional need. So there's that. But usually it could also mean that you're being faced with too many options, too many choices, and you're being asked to narrow your focus. So that's one aspect of this card. Another one, because the figure is emanating from clouds, this card can be talking about like daydreaming, fantasizing, having your head in the clouds, and about coming back down to earth, because if you have your head in the clouds too much, this card would suggest that life is going to give you a reality check, right? So again, this card is about your intuition, your psychic ability, your spiritual growth and development in one sense. In another, it's about being faced with many options, choices, and needing to narrow your focus and basically asking yourself the question, the reflective question, what do you feel you need at this point in your life, right? Now, some of you know that I read with a directional cue that comes from Lenormand, Kipper, things like that. So I love the fact that she's facing the next card, right? So let's see what this card is, because there may be a directional cue here in terms of a message. So the middle card is, okay, so here we have the 3 of Fire in a more traditional pack. This would be the 3 of Wands. And so this card is about looking ahead, right? The figure is standing on a beach and facing the sea, and then there are 2 ships in the water facing him. So on some level, this is about like waiting for your ship to arrive, so what are you looking for in life to come in, right? Now, for me, I've been talking about this several weeks now, and so it's not lost on me that the suit of fire, or wands, can be about job, business, enterprise, endeavors. And so for me, this card can be about looking for work. So there may be somebody who's watching this video who is looking for work. And so this could be, you're looking actively online, because this card for me can be about doing searches on the internet. So this could be somebody who's actively looking online for work. And then with the 7 of water coming before it, and I talked about having your head in the clouds, fantasizing, daydreaming. It could be about, needing to be realistic about the job search, right? Like you're getting an idea of what's out there in terms of jobs and employment situations. So in other aspects, this card can be about, like I said, looking ahead. So this is about looking to the future. And the prospects for the future looking very bright, because he's looking towards the sun. It reminds me of a song, and I believe the group is, if I remember correctly, Timbuk 3. And the song is The Future So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades. Yeah, so I always think about that song in my mind when this card turns up. But maybe from a more spiritual standpoint, 7 of water, this card is asking us to consider what's our vision, what's our outlook, what do we envision for our lives, and how can we take action on that? Because the suit of fire is all about action. It's about intention and action. They both go hand in hand, right? So it could be, if I go with the 2 cards on the table right now, the fact that the figure here in the 7 of water has her eyes closed, it could be like being tuned in, contemplating, that thing being led by inner guidance, and then whatever inner guidance you receive, then that allows you to take action on that. Right, so maybe a metaphor here is like, standing on the sidelines, and this is about, getting into the game, so to speak, and not just standing on the sidelines, right? But it's about taking action once you have received the guidance. So there is that. And I will say right now that with 2 minor arcana cards on the table, this could suggest like you being more in control. Usually for me, if there's no majors or the tarot line is not ruled by majors, meaning like it's a ruling majority, then the minors would suggest like you have a little bit more control, a little bit more power, or being empowered through the cards and what they're advising, right? So it may be not having a whole lot of external factors that are keeping you from moving forward. Okay, so there's that. That's what I'm seeing here with these 2. So now the last card. Here we have, okay, so this is a week with just minors, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not talking like that's a problem, just an observation. And here we have another 7, right? So 7 is the ruling majority in terms of numbers. So again, remember, 7 is a number of spirituality. It's also a number of improvement. So it could be, we're looking to improve our lives in certain ways. But it's also a number of psychology. So this is about personal insight, self-awareness, things like that. And I love going back to the first card, 7 of water. The 7 is a number of meditation. So it could just be like one of the things you're being encouraged to do is to meditate on things. And it could also be too like questioning, what are you meditating on? So are you meditating on a particular thought that may be keeping you stuck, keeping you from moving forward? So it may be worth it to have moments of meditation for greater self-awareness. Okay, and so now with that in mind, the 7 of earth turns up as a card of assessment, right? So I loved how we're moving from, I'm going to put the card down, how we're moving from the spiritual, perhaps, with the seven of water to the physical with the seven of earth. And by the way, the seven of earth in the traditional pack is known as the seven of pentacles or the seven of coins. Right? So this card is about assessing your material matters. Right? So this could be, we're taking a look and we're assessing our money, our finances, our career, our well-being. Right? This card would suggest like you put in the work in regards to a situation or situations, plural, and you're waiting to see what grows and develops. Now he's standing in a harvest field of wheat. So this card can also be about, reaping what you sow or reaping a harvest, right? What I love about this, if I put this card back down with the Three of Fire, it's like, here's the work, the action, the effort, and then the payoff with the Seven of Earth. So it could just be suggesting that, whatever actions you put into effect this week, you may see a payoff. Yeah, but this card, again, can be about assessment. It could be about evaluation. It's asking you what has been the return on your investment. Now, that's ROI. That's a business term. But in other areas of your life, you put energy, you put time, you put resources into wanting to see a situation manifest a particular end result. So it begs the question, what was the return on your level of investment? What was the return on your energy, on the resources that you put into a situation in terms of its growth and development, right? And then I always think of a song, just like I did with this one. The song that comes to mind with this card is a Pet Shop Boys song called Was It Worth It, right? So we're looking at what we've reaped, and we're asking, was it worth it? And if you don't like the end result, then it's a matter of going back and looking at the metaphorical seed that you planted and seeing if you need to plant a different seed to reap a different harvest, right? And that would be the improvement part of the seven. So now, I'm going to come back to these two cards before I move on to the bottom line. These two cards would suggest the Seven of Earth with the idea of the universal spiritual, universal law of sowing and reaping. It suggests that we always reap what we sow, right? So it could just be a matter of being mindful of your intentions and the actions that you take because they lead to the harvest, right? And then the last thing I will say, I thought I was done. The figure here, standing here, and I said one of the things I said with this depiction is about waiting for your ship to come in. Well, this card is also about waiting, right? You have to wait for the growth and development, right? There is a process when we talk about sowing and reaping, right? So there's the seed, right? And the harvest on opposite ends of the spectrum. And in between, there's time, which means we have to wait for whatever the seed is to grow and develop and turn into the harvest, right? So there may be, for some people this week, a need to wait on something, to be patient, excuse me. And so life may be orchestrating situations for you in which you have to learn and practice the art of patience. So that's the last thing I will say about the tarot row. So now let's take a look at the Lenormand row. I am so excited, you guys. Okay, so now the first card. I'm going to read these in forward narration from left to right. So the first card is, so here we have the Ring card. So the Ring card is all about commitment, right? So it's about commitment. It's about obligations. So the question here is about what are you committing yourself to and why? Let's not leave out the tarot line with the 2 sevens, right? If we're talking about self-awareness and personal insight, why do you choose to commit to the things that you commit to? What at this stage of your life do you find engaging? I'm going to put the card down for a moment because it's a nice reflective question of Seven of Water, right? Remember now, Seven of Water is asking yourself the question like, what do you emotionally need at this point in life? What do you feel you need, right? And it would be a matter of, engage. What do you find engaging in life? right? But this card is also about promises, pledges. So this could be about the promises you make to yourself, the sevens, or the promises that you make to others, right? And one of the things that could happen here is that you may discover that, because I'm seeing myself here, that it's easier to honor the commitments that you make to other people versus the commitments that you make to yourself. And then, of course, the greater question would be, why do you do that? Why is that the case, right? Okay, but again, ring is about commitment, engagement. It's a partnership card. It is a card that talks about unions, mergers. The ring being circular can represent cycles and patterns. So if we're talking about self-awareness, this may be about paying attention to cycles, patterns that show up in life this week. Right? So there's the ring. Next card, lilies. Okay, so now if we're talking about somebody who is looking for work, 3 of fire, then one of the things this card would suggest is about experience. For me, lilies can represent wisdom, experience, somebody who's mature or seasoned, right? But if you're looking for work, it may be a matter of like you continuing to look for something that you have experience in already. So there's that. Now, there's the inset, and the inset is a playing card insert of the King of Spades. So for me, this card can represent somebody who is a senior or an elder, right? So this could be somebody who holds a senior position if we're talking about work, right? Engaging with somebody who holds a senior position within an employment opportunity, perhaps, right? But these two cards could be talking about a commitment to an older person or an old commitment, because lilies can represent something that's old. So honoring a commitment to an elder, honoring a commitment to somebody who's mature or seasoned or in their senior years. Now, if this is about perhaps a contract, because ring can represent contract, because marriage is a legal contractual situation, then this could be a contract that is maturing, right? And so that could be a matter of something that needs to be renewed, perhaps, right, before it lapses. These two cards could also be somebody who maybe needs to consider their marriage commitment, because sometimes for me this card can represent sexual situations in a more traditional sense, and then we have the marriage card here. So there may be somebody who's thinking about their marriage or reflecting on their marriage or something having to do with their marriage. So those are some of the things I would offer with the lilies. Okay, so middle card, this would be the heart of the matter, this line. Okay, so here we have anchor. And so anchor is a card that talks about hope, right? The Lenormand was created as the game of hope, right? And so the anchor was a pivotal card in the game of hope. So one of its meanings is hope, right? So this could just be a matter of maybe for some people, if they're looking at their situations, this card would suggest like, don't lose hope, right? This card is about perseverance as well, right? Now, if somebody's looking for work, then it may be somebody who's making a shift to maybe more long-term work, because the anchor for me is a work card, but it talks about long-term work. Yeah, so this is about hope, perseverance. It also is about security and stability, right? So now if we have something here involving an older person, let's say, then this card may be talking about their own sense of stability and security. Right, and then the ring would be maybe a promise or a pledge or some level of commitment about their sense of stability and security. Now I find it interesting, just from a visual standpoint, that we have above it the 3 of fire with 2 ships, right, coming in the water. So this could be about, anchors are attached to ships and keeps them in place, right? So this could be about, deciding to keep something fixed, keep something in place. So there is that idea as well. But again, for me, this card can be about, as the heart of the matter, stability and security. But one of those ways might be through work, seeking job stability, job security, things like that. But again, too, I also want to remember the advice, or remind you all of the advice about, remaining hopeful and having a sense of perseverance. Okay, so let's move on to the next card in the line. And here we have Mountain. Okay, and this may be why. So the Mountain is a challenging card because it can represent challenges, blocks, obstacles, right? So in the course of the week, there may be something that creates a sense of delay or setback, or maybe even something being postponed, right? This card would suggest like there's a hurdle that you, or a mountain, metaphorical mountain, that you have to overcome, right? It's not saying it's insurmountable, yeah, but it is a definite challenge card, right? And so that may be why the anchor card is appearing before it, letting you know, like, to be hopeful and have a sense of perseverance when the challenge, the block, or the obstacle comes up. Now, the other thing about the mountain can be about distant or remote locations or areas. So I'm only saying this because there's ships in this card and an anchor here. So there may be somebody who's planning on traveling or seeing a distant or remote location. But again, this card is about being mindful of delays, setbacks, and obstacles. And just remembering that you can overcome them. Yeah? Okay. And then the final card in the line is the Heart card. Okay. So this is a great outcome to have because it can represent feelings, emotions. I love the fact that it kind of bookends Seven of Water, which is also the suit of feelings and emotions. Right, so we have feelings, emotions, a sense of passion. For some people, this is the love and romance card, right? So I talked about the ring here at the beginning of the line with the lilies, and I talked about marriage, right? And so it could be if somebody is resonating with that aspect of it, right? Then this could just be a matter of maybe somebody's questioning whether to stay committed to that ring or stay in it, anchor. And this card might suggest, staying in it, right? Because you've been in it for a long time now. And despite the challenge or the obstacles, you could work it out because you have heart at the end of the line. Right, and if I read the two cards here, it's acknowledging the possibility of a challenge with love, challenge with romance, or a setback in love and romance. But again, remember, it's not insurmountable. Right, this card could be about, a delay with passion, meaning like whatever it is that you're passionate about moving forward, it might hit a roadblock or it might stall out somehow, some way, but don't lose hope, right? But what I'm saying here is like whatever the challenge is, maybe in a either a long-term commitment, a serious commitment, not necessarily just marriage, but a serious commitment, long-term, or marriage in and of itself could work itself out with the heart at the end of the line. Now, if it's not about marriage, let's just say, and if you're asking yourself, what are you committed to, engaged with at this point in your life, right? It may be based on something from the past coming back up or something you already have prior experience or wisdom in. Then there may be some delay or some setback but the passion for it comes back. So that is how I'm going to choose to read this line. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook video reading. Again, I was so excited. This is actually the first time I'm using the deck in a public space. So I loved the cards that turned up. Well, you know, except for the challenge card, of course, the mountain card, but it's not that bad. But I'm so excited about the cards that turned up. And, you know, just from a personal standpoint, I love how the deck looks and how it reads. And so I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. So if you have anything you want to weigh in about the deck itself, just let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, James and Mitchell signing off. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you made it to this point in the video, I do appreciate the gift of your time. I never take that lightly. So I'm hoping that you have a great day. I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week, and I will be right here in this space with you in our next Oracle Outlook video reading. So until then, take care.